Naram Chaya Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Dirayat Nashtapraeshu Abhareshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki Om Jnanatirandasya Jnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurumitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Happy to be back here in Dallas. All the devotees with Shri Kalachandji. And we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Lord Rsabhadeva's teachings, and we'll cover texts 7 and 8. So these are both very nice verses. Text 8 is a very famous verse, so that's the one that we will recite the Sanskrit to. But first of all, I'll just read through text 7. So, Yadana Pashyat Yayata Guneham Swarte Pramata Sahasa Vipaschit Gata Smriti Vindati Tatra Tapan Asadyamai Tunyamagaramagya. So translation, even though one may be very learned and wise, he is mad if he does not understand that the endeavor for sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Being forgetful of his own interests, he tries to be happy in the material world, centering his interests around his home, which is based on sexual intercourse, and which brings him all kinds of material miseries. In this way, one is no better than a foolish animal. Ooh, that's a heavy verse here. So this is Lord Rsabhadeva. He's speaking to his sons, and his sons have come to maturity, and so he's giving them the facts of life here, because they're still not married, and he's giving them some warnings here about the purpose of life, about what to do, what not to do, how to live a clean life, how to make actual progress according to your real spiritual self-interest, and how to avoid degrading oneself and wasting a human form of life. So, it's a short purport. I think I'll just read this purport. In the lowest stage of devotional life, one is not an unalloyed devotee. Anyavilashita shunya, yama karma yanavrita. To be an unalloyed devotee, one must be free from all material desires and untouched by fruitive activity and speculative knowledge. On the lower platform, one may sometimes be interested in philosophical speculation with a tinge of devotion. However, at that stage, one is still interested in sense gratification and is contaminated by the modes of material nature. The influence of Maya is so strong that even a person advanced in knowledge actually forgets that he is Krishna's eternal servant. Therefore, he remains satisfied in his householder life, which is centered around sexual intercourse. Conceding to a life of sex, he agrees to suffer all kinds of material miseries. Due to ignorance, one is thus bound by the chain of material laws. So, just comment briefly on this report here, is that you're all in Krishna consciousness, aspiring to be pure devotees, unalloyed devotees of the Lord. And yet until we come to that stage of pure devotional service, of unalloyed devotion, where we don't desire anything else except the pleasure of Krishna, we still have material desires. So if these material desires become very strong, then they can drag us away from Krishna consciousness. Even someone who knows that I'm a spirit soul, that I'm the eternal servant of Krishna, and that I'm not this body, but sometimes the material desires can become so strong that they make us forget all those things and just get pulled into the bodily concept of life and trying to satisfy the senses of the body through various means of which sex is the principle. So, Rsabhadeva is warning his sons that be careful, this world is a dangerous place, the urges of the senses are very strong, and they can sometimes get the best of you if you're not super vigilant and very strict in your devotional practices. So now he's going to continue in text 8. So please repeat. Pumsa striyami tunibhavametam.
Pumsa striyami tunibhavametam.
Tayor mito hridaya granti mahu.
Tayor mito hridaya granti mahu.
Atovriya kshetra sutapta vitar.
Atovriya kshetra sutapta vitar.
Janasya moho yamaham mameti.
Janasya moho yamaham mameti.
Please jump.
Pumsastriyam mitulibhavametam.
Pumsastriyami tunibhavametam.
Tayor mito hridaya granti mahu.
Tayo mito hridaya granti mahu.
Ato gruha kshetra sutapta vittay.
Atovriya kshetra sutapta vittay.
Jnanasya moho yamaham mameti.
Janasya moho yamaham mameti.
Pumsastriyami tunibhavametam.
Pumsastriyami tunibhavametam.
Tayor mito hridaya granti mahu.
Tayo mito hridaya granti mahu.
Atovriya kshetra sutapta vitar.
Atovriya kshetra sutapta vitar.
Janasya moho yamaham mameti.
Janasya moho yamaham mameti. Pumsastriyami tunibhavametam. Tayor mito hridaya granti mahu. Atovriya kshetra sutapta vitar. Janasya moho yamaham mameti. Alright, let's do the word for word all together. Pumsa of a male, striya of a female, mituni bhavam, attraction for sexual life, etam, this, tayo, of both of them, mitta, between one another, hridaya granti, the knot of the hearts, ahu, they call, ata, thereafter, griha, by home, kshetra, field, sutta, children, apta, relatives, vittai, and by wealth, janasya, of the living beings, moha, illusion, ayam, this, aham, I, mama, mine, iti, thus. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Please repeat. The attraction between male and female.
The attraction between male and female
Is the basic principle of material existence.
is the basic principle of material existence.
On the basis of this misconception,
On the basis of this misconception,
which ties together the hearts of the male and female,
which ties together the hearts of the male and female,
one becomes attracted to his body,
one becomes attracted to his body,
home, property, children, relatives, and wealth.
home, property, children, relatives, and wealth.
In this way, one increases life's illusions
In this way, one increases life's illusions
and thinks in terms of I and mine.
and thinks in terms of I and mine.
Someone like to read the purport?
I can do it. Thank you, sir. Sex serves as the natural attraction between man and woman, and when they are married, the relationship becomes more involved. Due to the entangled relationship between man and woman, there is a sense of illusion whereby one thinks, this man is my husband or this woman is my wife. This is called Irdaya Kranti, the hard knot in the heart. This knot is very difficult to undo, even though a man and a woman separate either from the principles of varnashram or simply to get a divorce. In any case, the man always thinks of the woman, and the woman always thinks of the man. Thus, a person becomes materially attached to family, property, and children. Although all of these are temporary, the possessor unfortunately identifies with his property and wealth. Sometimes, even after renunciation, one becomes attached to a temple or a few things that constitute the property of the sannyas. But such attachment is not strong as family attachment. The attachment to the family is the strongest illusion. In the Satya Samadhi, it is stated,
Ramadya Yavalkaya Muchyante Sri Sahayana Bodhyante Kishanarte Sham Vishesham Chayvidovidu.
sometimes it is found among exalted personalities like Lord Brahma that the wife and children are not a cause of bondage. On the contrary, the wife actually helps further spiritual life and liberation. Nonetheless, most people are bound by the knots of marital relationship, and consequently they forget their relationship with Krishna.
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, like I said, this is Lord Rsabhadeva is giving a warning. So we shouldn't think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. But now that I'm in Grihastha Ashram, now I have to become attached and, to my home, to my body, to my children, to my relatives, to my wealth. And Lord Rsabhadeva is saying that this is the natural tendency of the conditioned soul. So the more we're aware of our natural tendencies, the more, which are, as is being explained here, destructive tendencies, then the more we can use our intelligence to avoid those pitfalls. So that's the intention here, that it's a warning. So this is very likely to happen if you're not careful. So I'm telling you this so that you'll be careful not to fall off the cliff, basically, in Grihastha life. So one little funny thing is, I remember that when my husband and I were first associating with each other in London, we'd just began sort of talking to each other. So you know that feeling when you're just getting to know someone in a romantic relationship. It's very, like exciting and thrilling and all that. So I remember that during that stage, the devotee gave a class and it was on this verse. And afterwards, my husband came up to me and he said, and I was, while the devotee was giving class, I was just like, oh no, what am I getting myself into? But then my husband came up to me after the class and he's like, wasn't that such a romantic verse? And I was like, what? Romantic? He's like, yeah, the knot in the heart that ties the male and the female together. I was like, oh no.
Oh gosh.
So, anyways, it's just, it's funny. It's a matter of perspective. Because if you're in a certain frame of mind, you read this, you're just like, yeah, I got a knot, I have that knot in my heart. But the knot is supposed to be for Krishna. But it just shows how, even when we're in a certain mindset, even strong devotees, and that's what he's warning, even the strong devotees can see these things as very wonderful, very favorable, desirable. Right? I desire to have a very strong attachment to my spouse, to my house, to my body, to my relatives, to my children. Right? Like these things are all really nice and desirable, and yeah. But Rsabhadeva is saying that no, these things become problematic. And why do they become problematic? Because we start thinking that these things are mine. Right? We think this is my husband or wife, this is my child, this is my house, my money, my things, right? So, and as soon as we get into that I, me, and my conception of life, then it increases the illusion. Because the illusion that we're all in this material world is that I am this body, and I'm the proprietor, and that I'm the controller and the enjoyer. But actually Krishna is the only proprietor, he's the the supreme controller, he's the supreme enjoyer, everything is meant for his pleasure. So as soon as we start thinking that these things are mine and they're for my pleasure, then we get ourselves in big trouble, in big Maya, basically, in illusion, and that keeps us in the cycle of repeated birth and death. So, but all hope is not lost, because at the end of the purport, Prabhupada says that sometimes it's found that exalted personalities, for exalted personalities like Lord Rama, the wife and children are not a cause of bondage. On the contrary, the wife actually helps the husband further his spiritual life and leads him towards liberation.
I thought that was the part your husband was talking about.
What's that?
I thought that was the part your husband was talking
Me
about.
too.
No, he liked the knot in the heart part. And even we talk about that, like you say, when people are going to get married, we're going to tie the knot. And even in the Vedic ceremonies, they actually tie a knot, right, between the man's chadar and the bride's and her sari. So that's that's what it is. But the thing is that Krishna has to be in the center. So that's why great personalities don't fall into the trap of Maya's illusions through a marriage relationship, which is a sexual relationship, because their relationship is based on Krishna. And they support each other in the service of Krishna, they serve Krishna together, they have children, they have sex for the purpose of giving birth to children, who they intend to raise in Krishna consciousness, so that the children can also get free from the cycle of birth and death. And that actually the family situation helps further their spiritual life. So I actually had that experience. I mean, I don't know if my husband was joking when he said that. He might have been joking when he said that too. But, he was actually very Krishna conscious, very strict in his sadhana, and always very clearly doing everything to try to create a favorable atmosphere within the home and our living situation for everyone's Krishna consciousness. Like we moved to Vrindavan, we moved to Mayapur. So, I'm very grateful to my husband for his guidance in creating a very Krishna conscious Grihastha ashram. And of course, I was also a very serious devotee. I remember before I got married, I was like, very strict sadhaka, and praying to Krishna that Krishna, I realized that I need to get married. Please send me a husband who is not going to drag me down in my spiritual life, who's actually going to support me and lift me up in my spiritual life. And let me not become so entangled in the relationship that I just, get stuck in Grihastha ashram forever. I was, even before I got married, I was thinking that way. So
My husband takes sannyas.
I want a husband who's going to take sannyas. Yeah. So, so we can make it very Krishna conscious and very favorable. And I felt like my marriage helped me in my Krishna consciousness. Having children helped me in my Krishna consciousness, because you do get attached to your children, but that's fine if you're attached to them as spirit souls and you're very responsible. That attachment makes you highlights your responsibility to get this soul back to Godhead. That Krishna has very kindly sent me this soul to take care of, to nurture them in their Krishna consciousness, and then that forces the parents to do everything possible to be exemplary role models in Krishna consciousness, to show the example of what it means to be a Krishna conscious devotee, and then the children, by imitating that and taking guidance here and there, and then they also become Krishna conscious, and then they then the kids start wanting to go to the temple and go to the festival and do some service for Krishna, and they drag the parents as well. Sometimes the parents are dragging the children, sometimes the children are dragging the parents. But somehow or other, they're all dragging each other closer to Krishna. Right? So that's very favorable Krishna conscious family life. But even in Krishna conscious family life, we shouldn't underestimate the ways that the very activities that liberate us can also increase our cause of bondage. Right? So, and Grihastha Vision Team, they have their motto is something like strengthening the bonds that free us. Right? So it's not, we don't want to strengthen the bonds that entangle us. So when our attitude towards each other and our attitude towards the activities that we do in Grihastha Ashram becomes, that for my enjoyment, becomes selfishly motivated, then it becomes a cause of bondage. And actually, Srila Prabhupada speaks all the scriptures, and Srila Prabhupada in his purports also, confirms about how sex is the strongest cause of bondage in the material world. And I'm going to read a little bit here from Bhagavad Gita, where in chapter 3, if you want, you can go to this. It's going to be 339. And then maybe I'll read a little bit beyond that. But in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 339, Srila Prabhupada writes, "It is said in the Manusmriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel." So sometimes we may think that sex desire is coming up. If I just indulge it, then it'll be satisfied and it'll go away and I'll be peaceful. But that's not the case, according to Manusmriti. Is that it doesn't make it go away any more than putting a big log of wood on the fire is going to put out the fire. It may seem that the fire goes down a little bit at first, but then once it catches on, it blazes even more. So that's the situation, that the more we indulge in sex, the more the sex desire actually increases. And Prabhupada continues here in the purport. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus this material world is called Maitunya Agara, or the shackles of sex life. And that was mentioned in the verse that we read from Bhagavatam, text 7, the first one. It uses the same thing, Maitunya Agaram. That means that the home, if the home is based on sex, then it becomes, then the person in that situation is no better than a foolish animal. So Prabhupada says it. Material world is called Maitunya Agaram, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. So, in the prison, everybody wants to get out of prison, but they can't because they're barred in. The bars are there. Or sometimes they used to actually shackle the ankles, like they put these like iron clasps around the ankle of the prisoner, and it would be attached to a heavy ball or concrete wall or something like that, so they couldn't even walk anywhere. So in the material life, we may know that this is not our place and that we need to get out of the material world and go back home, back to Godhead where we belong in the spiritual world. And the same way that a prisoner knows that they need to get out of jail and live a free life. But what is shackling us here to the material world? What is preventing us from being able to be liberated and go back home, back to Godhead? It's not bars, it's not an iron thing around our ankle, it's sex life. The shackles of sex life. So, something to be aware of is how binding it is. I'm just going to go back a little bit and read these verses here leading up to this verse. This is a very important part of Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna asks an important question to Krishna. He says, "O descendant of Vishnu, by what is impelled to sinful acts even unwillingly, as if engaged by force?" So why do we sometimes do, bad things, wrong things, sinful things, even though we know it's wrong, we know it's going to have consequences, and we don't want to do it? So Krishna answers, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world." So this is the enemy. This is the enemy that we are up against in material life, is lust, and specifically sex desire. But then there are some verses now that give us a little bit of hope. So one is this, in text 38, Krishna says, "As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust." So the good news is that human beings are like fire covered by smoke. So it means that in the human form of life, we are the least covered by lust. Like the embryo covered by womb is like the embryo can't even see the light of day, right? It's just in complete darkness. And then mirror covered by dust, also you can't see your reflection at all. although it's a little bit easier to remove the dust than it is to get for the embryo to come out of the womb. But then covered by smoke, you can see the fire through the smoke. Even if the smoke is thick, you can still see the fire, you know that it's there. So that's the good news, is that we can, even though we struggle with lust, we can still see that we're spirit souls, that lust is something foreign to us. It's not our natural propensity. Our natural propensity is love for Krishna and loving all other beings without any mood of enjoying them, without exploiting them, without seeing them as sex objects. So means that we can get over that. And then Krishna goes on, so thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So this smoke analogy is also good because smoke, like you're sitting around a campfire and the smoke comes in your face. It's like it burns your eyes. It's painful, right? It's disturbing. So in the same way, if we see lust or sex desire as something disturbing and troublesome and painful, then we'll want to, get out of the smoke. Get out of the smoke and come around to a place where we can see the fire clearly. In other words, we can see our spiritual consciousness clearly, not disturbed by this shrouding of smoke. And then Krishna points out where lust resides. He says, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So it's not only in the senses, but it's also in the mind and the intelligence. For example, in terms of sex desire, the senses have their urges. The genitals may be pushing us in some direction, but the mind is also in on it, right? The mind is also thinking, yes, this is a good thing. Yes, I want that, or this person, or that person. And then the intelligence also gets roped into it. That the intelligence starts scheming and making plans for, how to get, how to associate with this person, how to get their attention, how to make them like me, how to whatever, get into a relationship with this person so that I can satisfy this desire that I have, which the mind is into, which the senses are pushing me. So they all get roped into this lower urge. But then Krishna goes on to say that Arjuna, in the very beginning, curbed this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slaying this desire of knowledge and self-realization. So he's saying you need to regulate the senses. So so what do we do to regulate the senses? First of all, there's marriage, right? Talking about sex desire. So first of all, there's marriage. So at least restrict yourself to one person. And then according to Srila Prabhupada's instructions, also even within marriage, there should be some kind of regulation, right? Like different places he said different things. Only for conception of children, once a month you try to conceive, like that. And then it becomes regulated. It doesn't drag us away, because then we have a plan. Like we've used our intelligence to make a plan. That, okay, the urge of the genitals is there, but I'm going to strategize in a way that I can satisfy that urge in a regulated way and do it in a way that's connected to Krishna. Because anything that's connected to Krishna becomes purified. Krishna is the purifier. So even sex desire, when used to produce Krishna-conscious children, it becomes an act of devotion, which purifies us. And Krishna says that I am a sex life which is not contrary to religious principles. And so that is possible. We can actually control our sex desire by regulating it, by dovetailing it, by using it in Krishna's service to invite exalted souls into our families for their continuation of their progressive Krishna consciousness, as a service to those souls and a service to Krishna. And then the next verse, text 42 from Bhagavad Gita, is most encouraging, because it says, the working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses, intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So this is basically Krishna saying that you can do it. He's saying that yes, it's difficult, but you can do it. Why? Because you're higher than all these things. The senses, the mind, the intelligence, they may be riddled with lust, but you are higher than those. You are the boss. You can take charge, and you have the power to realign all of them and teach train the intelligence and the mind that no, we're not just going to indulge in all kinds of like illicit sex to satisfy the senses. We are going to do things properly because we're not animals. We're in the human form of life now, and we have responsibilities. A responsibility to ourselves, to society, to Krishna. So this is very empowering. And then he ends this chapter saying, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So he's giving us the formula for how to conquer lust, how to transcend sex desire, is by knowing that we're actually transcendental. And it's no coincidence that the next chapter, chapter 4, is called Transcendental Knowledge. So he's saying, you have to know yourself to be transcendental to the senses, mind, and intelligence. And now I'm going to give you the transcendental knowledge by which you can know yourself to be transcendental. So everything is here in the Bhagavad Gita to help us in a very practical way to deal with these very strong desires, to deal with lust, which drags us away, which makes us lose our intelligence. So I want to also look at, because in the verse that we read, we heard about the Hridaya Granthi, the knot of the heart. So there's also, can you go to Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2-21? There's a verse there that talks about this knot of the heart and how to cut it. Or you can go do Sanskrit. So we can say this together. Vidyate hridaya granthis chidyante sarva samshaya shiyante chasya paramani drishta ekatmanishvare. So right there in the first line, we have Vidyate hridaya granthis. That's what we're talking about there. Hridaya granthi, the knot of the heart. Let's scroll down. And Vidyate means pierced or cut. So he says, thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. So what is he talking about with thus? What is the thus that causes the knot in the heart to be pierced? So there's a sequence of verses that comes before this where he's talking about the importance of hearing about Krishna and serving the devotees. And this is where the verse Nashtapraya Shiva Badreshu comes in, right? By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering a service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service to the Lord is established as an irrevocable fact. So this is the way to cut the knot in the heart. And another thing to remember is that lust is the perverted reflection of love for Krishna. So lust is so strong, it's the strongest thing, especially sex desire is like the strongest force that's dragging us down in the material world. And that's because it's the reflection of the strongest propensity of the soul, which is to love Krishna. So when you take a very, just like if you reflect something, the top part is going to become the lowest part in the reflection. So the source of the greatest happiness and liberation is love for Krishna, and the source of the greatest misery and entanglement is lust for material enjoyment. So, but I'm going to take you before we get there. Here in Bhagavad Gita 3:39, Srila Prabhupada in the purport. No, not 339, 337, Srila Prabhupada talks about how to transform our lust back into love. So maybe we can just take time to read this purport and then do something else.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So let's read the purport to 337. You have it there? Okay, go ahead.
When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed transformed into lust, in association with the mode of passion. Or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues in material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is a manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If, therefore, the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath and spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities. And when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutras, wherein it is said, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. One should inquire into the Supreme. And the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as Janmadyasya Yato Nyavyad Itiratascha, or the origin of everything is the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the Supreme. If therefore lust is transformed into love for the Supreme or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravana. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies.
Yeah, thank you. So, I made a little PowerPoint. I made like a flow chart of what's happening in this purport that helps us to understand the process that Prabhupada is describing here for how love for Krishna becomes transformed into lust, and how we can transform it back into love. So this is called From Love to Lust and Back Again. So we start, so you're going to have to just keep clicking here. Love for Krishna comes in contact with the mode of passion and gets transformed into lust. Prabhupada said it's just like milk being in contact with sour tamarind or yogurt. So we put something sour in the milk and it curdles, right? So it becomes something different. And unfortunately we can't get curdled milk to go back to being milk. But fortunately we can get lust to go back into being love for Krishna. So we're going to look at all the different pathways that lust can take in the material world. So if the passion that turned our love of Krishna into lust is mixed with ignorance, then it induces us to perform sinful activities, which lead to frustration. And then if that frustration is influenced by the mode of ignorance, that leads us to anger, which creates illusion, which continues our material existence, increases our lust, and increases our material entanglement. So then if we go back to more passion mixed with ignorance in relation to the newfound lust, then we stay in that cycle there, in that down, just stuck in the lower modes, going round and round in the cycle of repeating birth and death. Okay, but if our love, the passion which created our lust is mixed with goodness, then it leads us towards religious activities to try to fulfill our desires according to Vedic injunctions, which is known as karma kanda, or it could be karma yoga if it's a more God-conscious form of that, which actually fulfills our desires. So when we try to fulfill our desires, our material desires in religious ways, then the desire actually gets fulfilled. It doesn't get frustrated, and so it doesn't lead to anger and this endless downward spiral, but it actually uplifts us And because we were following principles based on Shastra, it gives us faith in the Shastra. If that faith in Shastra becomes influenced by the mode of passion, then it's going to just drive us to do more karma kanda, right? So, these Shastras are really good. I did what it said and I got what I wanted. Let me try to get another thing that way. So, like that. So we can get into a spiral that way. But if our faith in Shastra is influenced by the mode of goodness, then it's going to lead us to go further in Shastra, go beyond the material rituals for prosperity in this world, and try to seek what higher things does Shastra have to offer me, and to inquire seriously from Guru Sadhana Shastra, and that will lead us to the process of bhakti, or Krishna consciousness, which is the goal of all Vedic knowledge, and reawaken our love for Krishna. Okay. So there's one more thing. So going back to frustration. If in frustration we somehow come to the mode of goodness, then that frustration can lead us to inquire about our real position, right? Who am I? Why am I suffering? What's going on here in this world? And then if we are fortunate enough to inquire from appropriate sources of Guru Sadhana and Shastra, then you'll also be directed towards the path of bhakti, by which we can reawaken our dormant love for Krishna. So, of course, there are other things that could happen. For example, if we inquire about a position from the wrong person, then we could end up being influenced by the mode of passion and going back down to other things again. So this is kind of just basically I went through Prabhupada's purport here and things that he mentioned that I put up there. So it's just, I thought it makes it very clear this way.
That's great. Thank you.
Go ahead to the next. Okay, so this is another way to, so the process for, when we come in contact with Guru Sadhana and Shastra, then in this age we're going to learn about Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya is the incarnation of Lord from this age. Any bona fide guru is going to teach us about Lord Chaitanya and help us to establish our love for Krishna, because Lord Chaitanya is called, well, this is prayer that was composed by Rupa Goswami. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaur Krishna Namaha. So he's offering those obeisances to Lord Chaitanya, who is Mahavadanyaya. He's the most merciful, most magnanimous, most charitable personality. Why? What is the great charity that he's giving? Why is he so merciful? Because he's giving Krishna Prema Pradayate. He's giving love for Krishna to the conditioned souls. And he is Krishna himself, but he comes in the golden complexion of Srimati Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya wants to give us Krishna. He's just dying to give us Krishna. And he's giving through his mercy, and he's also giving through his instructions. So I have some verses here that are Lord Chaitanya's instructions from Chaitanya Charitamrita about how to get pure love for Krishna. And so, someone please read this one. You can just read the English.
Pure love of Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens.
Yeah, so this is very sweet. It's very encouraging to know that love is already within us. It's already within us, and it's supposed to be coming out also. It's supposed to be expressed. We're supposed to love Krishna. We're supposed to love everyone. But the problem is that when that love shines through the filter of all of our conditioning and anarthas, it comes out as lust. And that degrades us instead of uplifts us. But we can purify the heart of all these, contaminating filters, and to allow the love that's naturally in the heart to shine through by the processes of devotional service. So Shravanadi, Shuddhachitta Kare Udai. That Shravanadi means Shravana, etc. So this is referring to the 9 processes of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, like that. And then Lord Chaitanya goes on to say that out of the 9 processes of devotional service, the most important is chanting the holy names. And if we do so offenselessly, then we can very easily obtain the most valuable love of Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya is directing us that To awaken our love for Krishna, the best thing, the most powerful thing is chanting the holy names of the Lord. And then, so please read.
It is the nature of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra that anyone who chants it immediately develops his loving ecstasy for Krishna.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, this is specifically the Hare Krishna mantra, the mantra that we chant every day. It's the nature of this mantra to awaken our love for Krishna. The next one. I think this is the last one. It's a sweet one. Go ahead, just
Love makes Krishna dance. It makes his devotees dance, and it dances personally. In this way, all three dance together in one place.
Yeah. So we can go from being squashed by sex desire and lust in all of its various forms to dancing with Krishna, dancing with bhakti itself. This life becomes a dance, a divine dance with Krishna, and we can dance our way back home, back to Godhead. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by following the process of devotional service, specifically chanting the holy name, and regulating our senses according to the instructions of Guru Sadhana Shastra. Jai. So I will open up for questions and comments. It's Prabhupada.
Prabhupada Priya, thank you so much for this class. Very interesting that this is your class about after our conversation yesterday. Well, after our conversation yesterday. I think it's really sweet. Yeah, and based on that point that you made yesterday, we were kind of talking about like just the different stages of bhakti and sadhana bhakti and raganuga bhakti and how one can't really practice raganuga bhakti if they still have sex desire because it's the antithesis of raganuga bhakti. I'm wondering, is that to the degree that we have sex desire, to that degree, like it hinders us, or if we have sex desire at all, we just can't, like, at all even approach that form of sadhana bhakti?
Well, the thing is that Krishna consciousness is so strong that even if we still have some latent material desires and attachments to the body, that if we just really focus very intensely on Krishna consciousness, then those things gradually subside, right? Like it says in Bhagavatam, that akama sarva kama va moksha kama dharani tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That whether you're free from desires or whether you have all desires, or even if you're desiring impersonal liberation, don't worry about it. Just perform bhakti yoga with great intensity and very with concentration and attention to the Supreme Person, and all these things will gradually diminish. Right? And we see examples of that through the scriptures. Dhruva Maharaj, he had his material desires, but he followed the instructions of his guru. He performed bhakti yoga, and even when he got the opportunity to have his material desire fulfilled, he didn't want it anymore. Okay, so that's the desired result. But we have to be in order for that to work, we have to be very, very intense. We have to practice. We can't just be nonchalant. We can't be spacing out, doing our japa. We have to be like, this is the process that's saving me. This is what I'm doing. And we need to keep reminding ourselves that, okay, this material desire is there, but I don't want it. It keeps coming up, but I don't want it. Right? This is what I want. I want Krishna. I want love for Krishna. I have this desire because I've been in the material world where sex is what makes the world go around. And so for so many lifetimes this has been my go-to, my default setting, but I don't want it anymore. I'm rejecting that. And I'm reaching for Krishna. I'm eagerly, desperately trying to awaken my love for Krishna. So if we have that mentality, then it's okay. But as soon as we start thinking, yeah, I have this sex desire and I really want to try to fulfill it, and at the same time practice Raganuga Bhakti, that's not going to work.
What about like in Grihastha ashram, like with regulation, like, under the guidance of devotees in this way?
Yeah, that's okay if it's really done in service. See, everything has to be done in service. As soon as there's any part of your life that is not serving Krishna, that makes you ineligible for like higher levels of bhakti. Like really, to access those higher levels, you really have to be like, my life is for Krishna. I am the eternal servant of Krishna. I have nothing to do except serve Krishna. And if my service to Krishna is to, serve my husband or wife, to bring Krishna conscious children into the world and serve them in the development of their Krishna consciousness, I'll do that as a service. Right? But it has to be with a service mentality.
Sorry, I have a question. Can you still enjoy in a service mentality?
I mean, don't we enjoy service?
Yeah. But I mean, this particular type of service, I guess.
I mean, it's by nature, it's enjoyable. So, it's just like eating, Should you not enjoy while you're taking prasadam? Right, you're enjoying the sensation of, prasadam on your tongue, but that's not the prime thing. You're not eating to enjoy your senses. You're eating to maintain your body to serve Krishna. So in sex, it's the same thing. You're going to enjoy, there's going to be physical pleasure there, but you're not doing it for that. That's kind of like just a side benefit.
Thank you so much for this wonderful class, and also the PowerPoint and the work that you did to make all that flowchart. I actually was listening to a lecture by Bhakti Prakasha Swami Maharaj, and it was the same verse yesterday.
Oh yeah?
So it was, and he was saying that actually in many temples they skip over this or they don't talk about it. So I just feel really thankful that
you talk
about it, and it's really straightforwardly, and I just really am in gratitude for that, because I think he was saying that that's rare in Western temples sometimes. So thank you. What was your number one thing that you did in Grihastha Ashram that was like really helping your devotion service? What was like?
Waking up really early and chanting very good rounds. Like that was like, whatever situation I was in, just like chanting 16 rounds every day, trying to focus as hard as I could. And everything comes from that, basically. Yeah. And also, see, what we saw in this flowchart is that the modes of nature are also very important, right? Because depending, at every stage, just go back to where it shows that whole flowchart. You see how at every stage is depending on what influence of the mode, what mode is influencing our consciousness, and whether we're going to be degraded or elevated. So that's why Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita speaks so much about the three modes of material nature. So if in our Grihastha Ashram we also try to keep everything in the mode of goodness, then that's going to make sure that even if we get frustrated, it's just going to help us to become better devotees. Even if whatever happens, it's going to uplift us rather than degrade us. So mode of goodness means, keeping everything clean, being honest in all of our dealings, mutual respect in relationships. It means doing our duties, whether we like them or not, performing our roles in the family life responsibly. And of course, studying the scriptures and doing our spiritual responsibilities for our spiritual master. And also, the more we have the mode of goodness prominent, the more that everything's going to become nice and spiritually conducive. Yes.
This morning we were reading, we read a little bit about Srila Prabhupada. It was a book by Giriraj Swami, and Srila Prabhupada becomes very upset because the devotees weren't coming to Mangala Arati or were coming late. And he got so upset that he got up himself at 4 a.m. and just in his gamsha, and he went to the bath in the freezing cold, like water. And this was his, saying, hey, this is how important this is, that even I'm getting up and taking a bath in this cold water. The reason why I bring this up is I was thinking that morning program is like the king of the Lord goodness. It's like, and you mentioned it, getting up and like chanting your rounds. And I was thinking, Dave was talking about things we don't talk about in temple, and I really think that this is something we don't talk about enough, is about how important morning program is. Yeah. And I really just thinking it's been something that's been on my mind. I think it's really something as an organization we really need to think about, because it's seeming like people are it's dying in ways, so many ways. Morning program, it really needs to be the thing that we do to keep us in the mode of goodness, so that our temples are running, our management's running in the mode of goodness, our projects are running with goodness, our devotees become in the mode of goodness. Anyways, it's just, anyways, if you want to throw in some thoughts, I really appreciate it.
I mean, the symptom of happiness in the mode of goodness is that it's like poison in the beginning and nectar in the end. Right? So come to morning program is one of those things. It's like you don't want to get out of bed. But when you do, just get up and, get yourself ready, go, and then you'll feel so good afterwards, right? Whereas if you succumb to the mode of ignorance and just, lie in bed, and then, it may feel like, nectar in the beginning, but it's going to be poison in the end, right? Yeah, so everything, like in Grihastha Ashram, there's so many duties to perform. And those duty by nature is like usually like poison in the beginning and nectar in the end. Like duty, we call it duty because it's something that you don't really want to do, but you have to do. So, maintaining the family, taking care of the children, all the things. There's so many troublesome things in Grihastha life that you have to do, but if we just do them responsibly and try to do them and for the pleasure of Krishna and for the spiritual upliftment of our family members, then they become like nectar in the end, and everything comes out nice. Is it? That's something? Or understand?
Alright, cool. Thank you for the nice class. I was kind of wondering, like you were talking about how if we don't have this intensity, we'll get kind of like sucked up by lust, I think everyone sees it, but when we're in the mode of ignorance, lust can just like overwhelm us and take us over and like totally, ruin our day. And I'm wondering just like, what do you do if you feel just like the mode of ignorance is just so on top of you, or like, you have your rounds to chant, but you're like so exhausted, or like you ate too much and you're just so lethargic. Or like even you wake up in the morning and it's like you just feel this heaviness. What do you do if like the mode of ignorance is just kind of beating you up at a certain time when you know that you should do something devotional or something spiritual, but the mode of ignorance feels like it's just so heavy on you?
Yeah. So a few things. One thing is that make a note of what it was that brought about the mode of ignorance, right? Like if you said, if you eat too much, then that brings on a mode of ignorance for you. So then make a note of that, like, I can't eat too much because after this is going to be the consequences. I don't like the mode of ignorance, it drags me down, so I need to stop. I need to be proactive. We need to be proactive to not do those things which increase the mode of ignorance. And then the other thing, but if it's too late and there we are in the mode of ignorance and we somehow or other can't get ourselves out of it, then we need to seek good association, right? Just try to find somebody who's not in the mode of ignorance and be like, Hare Krishna, Guru, I'm so much in the mode of ignorance now, I really need your help. And then you can sit down and, chat together or read together or do some service, be like, all right, then come and help me, cut the vegetables, go take a shower, snap out of it, put on tilak, let's go, and then get down there in the kitchen, chanting, cutting vegetables and doing some kirtan while you're chanting, and by the end of it, you're going to be like, woohoo, feeling good. So association and just like pushing yourself out of that rut. And also reminded, like Krishna says, that you're the boss. The only reason you're in the mode of ignorance is because you allowed yourself to be. So you need to take charge of the situation to be like, no, I am higher than my senses. I'm higher than my mind. I'm higher than the intelligence, and I can take charge of this, and I can change my attitude. I have the power to change my attitude. As a spirit soul, the spiritual energy is superior to the material energy. Right? Material modes of nature are material energy. So the soul can actually overcome these by the help of Krishna. Right? Daivi yeshu gunamai mama maya dharatyaya mam eviye prapadyate mayam etam tarantite. That this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of nature, is difficult to overcome. Krishna says, he's admitting, especially these lower modes, they're very difficult to overcome. But What does he say? One who surrenders unto me can very easily cross beyond them. So we need to surrender to Krishna and do the things that. So what does surrender to Krishna mean? It means accepting what's favorable, rejecting what's unfavorable, right? Being proactive about that. Accepting Krishna as your maintainer and protector. So taking shelter of Krishna, being humble, and offering one's whole self to Krishna. So those processes and associated with devotees, 9 processes of devotional service, we have all the tools. We know what the tools are. We just need to use them. Right? I think our time's passed. Grandra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Om Ratanandi.
Hari Bol.
Can I ask the question in the camera?
Nah, it's okay. You're gonna have to wonder what I was gonna ask.